Mother molds with 15,6 polyurethane resin. We're going to make a simple mother mold over a 7120 platinum silicone mold using 15,6 thickened with polyfiber. It's very important when you're using 15,6 resin to shake up the part B before it's dispensed. Now the manufacturer says in the data sheet that 15,6 can be measured 1-to-1 by weight. It can also be measured by volume, but weight is always the most accurate measurement for this material. So here we're weighing out equal parts of A and B with a very accurate gram scale. We're measuring out about 6 ounces of A and 6 ounces of B. Once we've dispensed A and B into our mixing cup, it's time to stir them up. Make sure when you mix polyurethane resins, especially 15,6 where you have a thick part B, that you stir it very carefully, scraping the sides and the bottom of the container. Now 15,6 normally will be a very runny consistency when A and B are mixed together. So in order to make our mother mold, we're going to mix in polyfiber. Now polyfiber can be added to several of the polyurethane resins as a thickening agent. It's a lot safer to use than Cabasil, and here we're going to add a couple of handfuls to our 15,6 resin to thicken it up to a trowelable consistency. Now you'll notice here as we stir in 2 handfuls of polyfiber, as it mixes into the polyurethane resin here, it becomes more of a frosting-like consistency, and that's what we're going for in order to get the resin to stay on a vertical surface. Once you've mixed in your polyfiber, the best way to test to see if you have the thickness that you want for making your mold, what I do is smear the resin up on the side of the mixing container, and if it stays put on that vertical surface, then you know you're ready to go. Now one approach you can use is to apply it with a cheap disposable brush here, and this helps get it into the surface of the mold without air bubbles. For larger pieces you may instead want to trowel on the resin with a mixing stick or a stir stick or a palette knife, as we'll do here shortly. For smaller molds like this where I need to work this into a lot of detail, I will brush it in first and then follow up with a trowel to shape the outside surface of the mother mold. Now here I'm just going for an even coverage of everything, and once I get all the resin out of the mixing cup and onto the surface of the mold, then I can worry about shaping that a little more accurately. Keep in mind that polyurethane resins are mass sensitive, which means that the sooner you can get it out of the mixing cup and onto your mold, the better. If you have a large mass of resin, several inches thick, whether it's sitting on in a mixing cup or on a piece, it's going to kick off faster than if it was spread out evenly, say a 1/4 inch thick. This is very important, so when you're spreading this out, you give yourself the maximum working time. Polyurethane resins cure the exact opposite of an air drying material. A thin section will actually cure slower than a thick section, so keep that in mind as you build up your mother mold. Now what we're doing here is I want to use my trowel to make sure that edge is even and that it comes right to the flange of the rubber mold that we've made. If we have rough edges there, we're going to have to sand those down later, and that's going to create more work for us. 15,6 polyurethane resin has about a 5-minute working time. So we've reached the end of that working time, and now we allow the resin to cure. And you'll notice it changes color slightly as that curing process takes place. It goes from being a somewhat translucent amber to a slightly opaque cream color. Now we've mixed up another 12-ounce batch to work on the other side of our mold. On this side we'll be applying this just with the trowel, just to show you both ways of applying the material. And you'll notice we've thickened this batch just a slight bit more to give us even more of a frosting-like consistency. Now in large mother molds you may also want to incorporate some fabric into this or some fiberglass to add additional strength. As it is, 15,6 is a very strong resin, but any additional reinforcement fibers will add more strength to it. And especially over a large span, it's a good idea to add any reinforcement you can. Now you'll notice again here, as we've applied our even coverage, we go back in with a trowel and smooth it out and make it as pretty as we can. And here we're coming back along the seam and troweling that smooth to keep the any burrs or any plastic from crossing over and causing those two sides to bond to each other. Very important because that minimizes how much sanding or finish work we'll have to do on the completed mother mold. Once we've completed the second side and allowed it to cure up, it's time to go back in and touch up some thin areas. So we've mixed up a small, about a 6-ounce batch of more 15-6 polyurethane resin with more polyfiber to thicken it. And here we're just going in spot checking a few areas that might be thin later on, might cause us some problems. The nice thing with 15-6 is it bonds nicely to itself, so as long as we come back in fairly quick, we can make sure that we cover any repairs and get a good solid bond to that original plastic surface. Now you'll notice again we're going around all these edges, keeping these very clean, because all this little work here, all these steps, will minimize how much sanding and finishing work we have to do to the final mold. And now again we allow that to cure, and then we're ready for demold. 15-6 will cure in about 4 to 6 hours for a total cure where we have handling strength where we can demold this piece. If we use 15x accelerator, we can speed that up, but typically it's a good idea to leave it for 4 to 6 hours to let it get the full strength before demolding.